Warrior needs bad.
Big money! Big prizes! I love it!
And welcome to another fabulous episode of Retrovaniacs. As always, I'm your host, Jeremy Parmentier, here with Jeremy Gregory.
Hey, guys.
And Billy Holiday.
Hello there.
And this week we're going to take on a style of a game we haven't really covered before, kind of. It's also a mishmash of other types, with Young Merlin for the Super Nintendo. But until we get into that, Jeremy, what have you been playing since the last time?
Well, since I've been playing so much of Young Merlin this past week, and it's like Thursday or Friday, I'd played it for a good 2 hours straight, and just kind of slowly losing my mind over the course of that time. I think I actually completely lost my mind and reinstalled World of Warcraft. And I have not played World of Warcraft for a good 7 or 8 years at this point. It may say something to how long I have not played because the highest level character I have is level 80. And that was the level cap back then. So I decided to kind of get back in there and see what I've missed out on, because I played a lot of World of Warcraft back in the day. And it's been so long, and I've heard, there's just been tons of things changed since then, and I just wanted to get back in there and see if I could level my the old character I used to have, Rogue, from level 1 and see how far I get before I just lose interest or something like that. And man, they've changed a lot in that game. I don't think Billy has actually ever played World of Warcraft, but I know Jeremy P was a big World of Warcraft fan just like me. So when did you actually stop playing?
I didn't make it much past where you did. So if you level capped at 80, it means you made it to the Ice Crown expansion with the Lich King. And I got to the one after that. I got through Cataclysm, which raised the level cap to 85 and kind of rebuilt the old world, which I thought was really cool. But otherwise, I got into a raiding group that was fairly serious for the Ice Crown time frame, and then I just lost interest completely. It's too much time and effort for me to make that happen. It was once we had a kid, and all of a sudden I couldn't do 5 nights a week with these guys. They weren't very understanding, so I decided I was done.
Yeah, I didn't even make it to Cataclysm. I know this asshole over here is just laughing his ass off because he doesn't understand what the hell we're talking about.
I feel like somebody's girlfriend that doesn't play video games, and he's got his and my significant other's buddies are over and they're discussing things. I have no room to really say anything, but I don't know why I've looked down on this. I don't know why. But I told you guys I don't play. I don't play because I think little of it. I just know what it would do to me. I'm fairly certain it would suck me right in. But yeah, you guys have discussed it over our little group chat, and I just sit there and I look at it. It's like, well, I guess it's impressive. There's a lot of talk of level 80s. I think there's a Death Knight that's level 80. Yeah. And I remember Jeremy P has a chamois that's 80.
Oh, it's very impressive.
And there was talk of one Nelf who is not Horde. And I said, all right, guys.
We probably should have kept that to a private conversation, but yeah, I'm glad we bored you. But you yet memorized almost everything we had talked about. It's a game definitely
because I'm almost ashamed of how intrigued I'm becoming with the more talk of it.
I swore I'd never play another one of those games again before Warcraft came out because I got sucked into EverQuest, which is a far worse game, for probably 3 years. So I was like, yeah, I'm not going to play any of these again. And then everybody I know was playing World of Warcraft when it was new, and I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And I lost 5 years of my life. I mean, I literally played every day. Sometimes I'd work for 8 hours, come home, and play for 10. And like, what am I doing? But yeah, having a kid will change that immediately. Well, hopefully. I guess some people don't. But it changed immediately for me where I just didn't have time. And I don't miss that. It felt like it was chores. Like there was always when there was something new and cool, it was like, oh, this is the best thing ever. But then they introduced dailies, which were missions you could do every day. But if you didn't do them, you didn't earn enough tokens to buy a special hat. And then everyone else in your group had a special hat. And you're a loser for not having a special hat. And that's where I lost interest in it completely.
And, yeah, I didn't quite play it as much as you did. I didn't get into the raiding. I kind of wish I did, but our guild just wasn't big enough to do the the 40-man raids. Again, that was back when I played. Yeah, I guess it doesn't exist now. But I just kind of missed it. I played it so much back then that you kind of get this weird nostalgia for wanting to go back to it and just see what all's changed and everything. It's almost like a guy that went to college for 3 years and then dropped out, and then about 10 years later he wants to go back and see what he missed out, or get that degree. And you're walking up into that college with your Nike black tops and your bleached jean coat or whatever, and then you quickly realize just how out of it you are with everything.
So essentially, playing this World of Warcraft is like watching an '80s comedy.
I mean that's basically when it came out, I think. But it really does feel like I walked into this and I have no clue what's going on anymore. Talent trees don't exist. That's crazy. You go in there and you're like, hey, I'm going to do a 2030 15 build or something, and they're just like, what the fuck are you talking about, old man? That doesn't even exist anymore. I'm just like, what are you talking about? And all the kids are running around talking about their glyphs now, and I don't even know what glyphs are. So I just I got my cool baby penguin pet that I used to have. I think that's basically all I've got. I don't know what to do in World of Warcraft anymore, so I run around in the beginning area with my baby penguin pet.
I'll tell you, I'm laughing about it now, but pretty soon we're going to be arranging our recordings around my raid schedule.
It'll happen. It'll happen. Trust me. If you get into it, there's no way to avoid it. You'll go full in. It'll get it hooks in you immediately. I thankfully did not reinstall World of Warcraft, or else we would not be recording this. You guys would be doing it on your own because I would have vanished. So instead, I've been playing, again, some more Persona. Again, not that exciting. I did finish Affordable Space Adventures since last time. That makes, 4 games this year I finished. I'm very excited about that.
Look out for this guy. Man.
But then I realized that the Mega Man Legacy Collection for the 3DS was only $10. So it's Mega Man 1 through 6, the Nintendo versions, for $10. And I kept saying, I don't need that for $10. And then a piece of me was like, Jeremy, if you were 13 right now and someone could have told you could get all 6 Nintendo Mega Mans for $10, you would kill someone for that game for $10 to get it. And I admit that I just couldn't resist it. I was bored. I was looking for something to do, and I was like, I'm going to play Mega Man 1 through 6 in order. So I'm doing that now with the Mega Man Legacy Collection. I've already finished Mega Man 1. I'm at the Wily stages for Mega Man 2, and it does not have 8, so Jeremy's not going to be interested. But I've been playing nothing but Mega Man.
Well, the best thing is it has 2, and that's the superior Mega Man game.
2 is definitely the biggest and the one that I'd say is the most impressive. If when you were playing them when they were new, Mega Man 1 was cool, but it was kind of unknown at the time, and it wasn't as impressive as 2. 2 came out, and it was mind-blowing. You had giant cartoon-looking bosses like that dragon towards the end, and there was nothing like that on the system. So it still holds up really well. All the games are super fun. I've tried a little bit of each one, and then I realized I wasn't getting anywhere because I wasn't focused, so now I'm just shooting through them in order. And you can probably follow me on Twitter because I have nothing else to post on Twitter, so very exciting there. Billy, what have you been playing?
I finished Uncharted 4, and I'll tell you, that game, anybody that, if you're a fan of the Uncharted series, you've got to get a hold of that one. That is probably one of the better games I have played so far this year. Outstanding ending to it also. I won't say anything on it other than I was blown away by it. The direction they seem to be taking things in. God damn, one of the best looking games. I found myself just taking random screen caps of it. Just to save that I have gone back to look at again. But other than that, I had to get that out of the way. And I'm going to have to play through again because I started to do that thing, and unfortunately I do it in all the Uncharted games, where when I know it's winding down, I kind of just start to run and gun through the thing and just hurry through. And there's so much to see, and there's so much I know I probably missed that I'm definitely going to go through again. But that Overwatch it's taken right hold of me. And I can't stop playing. I can't stop opening those boxes. And I've gotten some nice stuff out of those boxes recently. I got the Riverboat Gambler skin for the cowboy on there. I was very thrilled with that. That may be my top accomplishment in video games this year. But yeah, it's very enjoyable. I've played with Jeremy a little bit. and it's team based. And this one, it has to be a team effort, and that's the one trouble I've encountered. One man can't really go through. In Call of Duty, I mean, you see a guy, one guy goes 40-1 and can carry the team. One person, no matter how good, cannot carry a team on here. So I've found that it's absolutely crucial to fill your team of 6 up with as many people as you know, just to maximize the good times.
Yeah, because we were playing last night, and I had me and you and my girlfriend and a friend of mine and a friend of yours was playing, and we had almost a full team. There was only that one person out, but even that one person was so bad that you could instantly tell that they were actually dragging the rest of the team down with the decisions and the stupid stuff they were trying to do. That it's maddening. Because you really have to have everybody on the team at least, attempting to do the team-based thing. If it's payload or whatever, you need to stay on it. If it's a defense or attack, you need to be in the zone and not just trying to run off and do Call of Duty style shit. So it enrages me like no other game can when I just see somebody on our team not even attempting to play this team-based shooter like a team-based shooter. And last night I almost came pretty damn close to throwing my controller after one of those matches because I just wanted to strangle that kid who was on our team. It just killed me.
Yeah, and it's evident. This game, it has, I think one of the things that this one got me heated. I actually stood up at one point in time to express my displeasure. Usually I just do it while seated. But you have your control points on there like any other game of that type, and when you're losing that control point, when they've got 5 guys on it, and I'm down there by myself, because everybody just got wiped out. Nobody is going to make it there to help me in time, and I'm standing there trying to keep it down, and I find this guy is still off in the distance sniping. Your sniping hasn't worked. If we're about to lose this point, there's 5 of them on there. You're not hitting a lot of guys. Just come on down. Join me down here. Let's try to take a stand. But I mean, it's 5 people was still a lot of fun. And I think once we dropped that guy, moved along, we did fine. If you can get a full team on that thing, it's probably one of the more enjoyable experiences you can have right now.
Well, it sounds like that game. I don't play it. Everyone else I know is playing it. I'm going to have to get into it. I do have to say, Billy, if you're into collecting random loot crates, you should not start World of Warcraft. There's so many things you can collect and ridiculous garbage that is totally pointless, but yet you'll want every single one of them, and so don't get started. But speaking of magic, let's talk about this week's game, Young Merlin for the Super Nintendo.
Oh, this is some dark magic right here that got worked onto us. But I do want to say before we get started, no matter what we say about this game, this was a user, our listener submitted request, and I am thrilled we're actually getting those now, and we're getting around to them. And anybody else that might have a request for a game, fitting in our time frame that you want us to play, send it along. We'd be more than happy to entertain it.
Yeah, anything up to and including the Nintendo 64. So, nothing on the PS2 or Dreamcast or any of the later systems, but those earlier systems, definitely. We, again, no matter what we say about this game, the fact that I had never played this before and none of us really had any kind of previous notions about what we thought of the game, I think this might be my favorite game we've played so far, just for that reason. Not as a game to play, but just for that purpose. I've enjoyed this 2-week frame to play this. So this game it came out in 1994 for the Super Nintendo. I want to say it's the Super Nintendo version of an adventure game. The Super Nintendo version of if you really want to make King's Quest for a console, this is what you'd have to do, which is you take the same ideas in one of those games, just find items across the landscape and use them to solve puzzles. But then you've also got to add in some action scenes and some action pieces, or else you're not going to hold the console attention span. That's my only logic for why they put the game together like this, because there definitely were already adventure games on consoles. I mean, on the original Nintendo, you had Maniac Mansion, which is a straight adventure, like puzzle-solving action game, and one of the best games on the system. This one tries to do that. It tries to have some puzzles that make little to no sense at times, but then it adds in a bunch of action scenes to kind of tie it all together. Is that a good description of what this game was?
Yeah, I mean, this is basically just an action RPG, a very basic action RPG with an inventory system and a lot of puzzle solving.
Yeah, I mean, this is I could see this as a point and click type game. Very reminiscent of several of the early point and click games I played. With the big inventory and all that. More minecarts though than most point and click games I played.
Which is too many minecarts, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's we'll get to all those things. So the game starts, and you're Merlin. And again, if you don't have the manual, and we're assuming most people who are finding this in 2016 probably didn't find a boxed copy with a manual. So the game starts, and you see who you assume is Merlin walk out of his house, sees a woman kind of stuck in the river drowning. He goes to save her, jumps in, and somehow he manages to not be able to swim, drowns, and ends up on the shore of a magical land. And that's where the game starts. There's no further direction on what you're supposed to do, what your objective is. It's kind of a, here you are, now figure out what to do. And even with the manual, which I did go and find a PDF version of, it doesn't really explain a lot more as to what you're supposed to be doing, which I kind of like. I like the idea that you don't know what you're supposed to do. But because this is a puzzle game, for the first few items you find, it kind of tells you what to do, sort of by giving you arrows and there's little signs that are laying on the ground as far as like you when you first land in this world, you find I think it's a red gem. It's a gem of some sort, and if you don't do anything for a minute, it'll point towards this lake, and you go towards the lake and you use the gem, and hey, I threw the gem in the lake, and all of a sudden something happens. The lake shoots a rainbow out, and now I've got some sort of star that I can shoot at things. It's a lot of puzzles like that. If you didn't have the manual to explain anything as far as what the items do, it seems like most of the puzzles in this game are try everything you have and maybe things will work, but most likely it won't make any sense when it finally does.
Now, do you guys, how do you feel about that style of play? Because I took, after I had finished, I kind of read a few, other reviews and looked at comments on videos, and some people enjoy that. Some people enjoy, I have these vague items somewhere out in the world. This does something. I'm going to keep trying until I get it right. It is not my thing, and it quickly became a point of frustration. But do you guys do you have any positive feelings about that kind of gameplay?
I mean, I could enjoy that in the right kind of game. I definitely have before. But when it's like this, in especially these old adventure games where you're just literally trying everything in your inventory on everything on the scene, I'd never enjoyed that at all. I know there's a lot of people that really enjoy those classic adventure games, like the LucasArts ones, the Sierra adventure games, and that's just what they grew up with. So they're they kind of got used to doing that. But I never did. I didn't play those games. I mostly just grew up on the NES and platformers and crap like that. So when games like this, I just did not have the patience for, because I wanted it to keep moving. I didn't just want to sit there and try everything over and over and over again.
I was one of those kids. I played loads of graphic adventures. I also liked the text-based, like the Infocom games, the Zorks and such. And so the idea of taking a random item, not a random item, but an item you find, and therefore it has to have a use, is fine with me. I like those kind of games. In fact, the puzzle parts of this game I actually enjoyed pretty thoroughly. It's just that there were some items that would make no real sense as to why they work the way they do. Again, in a few cases, and I'll get to that in a second, if you had the manual, it actually says, you use this item to do this. And otherwise, you never would have known possibly what the item is, because there's no names on anything. It's just an image. So a good example is you find later on, it looks like a stick with a circle on the end. and I didn't know what it was. I wasn't sure if it's supposed to be like a net, that you just can't see the net because it's Super Nintendo level graphics and it's just a little item in your inventory. Was it supposed to be like a very, very badly drawn lasso? What is this thing supposed to be? Well, it's a bubble wand, like what you put in bubble solution and blow bubbles. And again, what would you do with a bubble wand? You do it a couple times and it shoots bubbles in front of you and it doesn't seem to do anything of value. And then there's one spot where you run into a bunch of, they look like tiny miniature dwarves. And they run around and they keep kicking you in the shins and you can't get past them. And you use the bubbles on them and they'll get sucked into the bubbles and float off the screen. Now, you never would have thought, except that you only have like 6 items at this point, but you wouldn't have thought logically, I'll blow bubbles at dwarves until they float off the screen. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But the manual actually says, use this wand, you would use it to attack the dwarflings. And you're like, well, that with the manual, I could have gotten through some of the things I looked up ahead of time, once I got to them, because I just gave up in pure frustration.
And the trouble with that is, and nowadays, you can find a manual online. But if you were a kid and you rented this thing, the best my video store did, they photocopied half a page from the instruction book on the back of the box. So you're not having any manual of any sort, and you can't go online. I don't know how far I would have made it. I'll tell you when I got hung up. I got hung up early on. This may have been the 3rd or 4th item. It's a balloon. And when you use it, you blow yourself up. But you just kind of blow up into a ball for a minute, and then you come back down. It took me forever to realize that when I go into the first time into the mines, there are some ladders that are broken, which I couldn't tell that I could go. I couldn't tell that I could go up. At that point, I didn't know this was something I could travel up. You have to use it right there in that particular spot, and it will float you all the way up that broken ladder, up to the next area. And it took forever using that. I wandered around, maybe a good 45 minutes, trying to figure out what do I do next. And this was early on. This is the first, 15, 20 minutes of the game. And that just that set the tone for me. That set the tone for my experience with this one.
Well, even when you want to use it for that, even if you know to use it for that, you have to be standing in a very specific spot on that ladder for it to even activate to float you up. So you could be standing at the bottom of that ladder, and I did this myself, use it several times, and you just kind of stand there. But you have to be at this very specific little edge of the ladder for it to finally send you up to the top. And it's pretty crazy, because I'm kind of like you, because I think I've mentioned this before. My video store when I was a kid just threw the instructions out. As soon as they got a new game, the instructions were gone. I don't know why, because they're assholes. But I remember seeing this at my video store and almost rented it a few times, because it looks, it kind of looks like a kind of cool action RPG on the back of the box. But if I would have got it home without those instructions, I think I would have maybe wandered around for a half hour to an hour and just put it back in the box and took it home, or took it back to the video store, because I just, no way I would have ever figured out even like maybe I would have figured out the first few things, but after that, there's no way.
I think it's interesting that we're coming at this from two very different angles. So the game itself, there's kind of an overworld connected map. It's not a bunch of individual screens as much as it is, a continuous overworld map that you can, the puzzles are what's stopping you from going to the next section, like a Metroid style game. But it's an overhead view, like a later Zelda game, kind of a 2D flat, but you can go in and out of the screen. You use different items to get by different obstacles, and there is action to it. I mean, once you get that star shooter, the very next section there are these like the tiny dwarves form together into like these pig things that walk back and forth across the screen. They're very slow. They don't do much, but you can kill them and get random pickups that give you more life. Fill up your life bar, or give you shamrocks that do random things if you earn enough shamrocks. So it has this action sense to it, along with the part that you find items and use them to get through. I personally liked the puzzle parts, even if they didn't make a whole lot of sense. That kind of game is very appealing to me. I didn't care for any of the action parts of this game at all, and I assume you guys maybe liked it a little more than that.
I could deal with the action parts. I mean, it's not anything amazing. It's not even close to something like Zelda, but you know, it at least broke up the action a little bit, and even though it was kind of clunky.
Yeah, I mean, I could stand those parts. It wasn't well done by any means, but it wasn't anything too horribly offensive. I think I actually did prefer the action parts. Doesn't mean I would want the game to have more of that in it. I think the puzzle aspect was good. I just didn't think it was implemented that well. But I mean, there's a lot of good things to say about this game. I thought for Super Nintendo, this was a great looking game, and I also you won't have any shortage of music to pick from this one. I thought it was a pretty good sounding game also.
I didn't think the music sounded bad, but I think that a lot of the clips were short enough, especially if you were frustrated, that you're going to drive yourself insane hearing that same 13-second clip over and over again. The main overworld theme that they use for the starting area you're in is I mean, it's totally fine, and it's supposed to kind of sound just like, oh, it's calm wilderness. But it's almost insulting you when you can't figure out the most basic puzzle involving a bubble blower and some dwarves. It's just the word. That's the music it's going to get to you at that point. Speaking of the good things, I thought that the fact that you could go kind of anywhere. The first place you go after you figure out kind of what you're supposed to do, you go through the starting area to just kind of get that shooter and get an idea of what your overall, the way the game kind of feels. Then you're sent to the mines, and the mines are more of an action sequence, which is why I didn't care for them at first till I figured out you're supposed to freeze everything. You get a bag that freezes things along with your star to make combat much easier. And then the mine is a giant maze, and you've got to figure out in this giant maze how to get to a part where there's a minecart. Now, the minecart itself, it's a puzzle. You have to find out how to get a wheel for the minecart, and you have to find a wrench from this other place, and you've got to go back and forth across from the mines back to the main area, and back to the mines and back to the main area, and eventually you'll get this minecart going. And at that point, I didn't mind the backtracking that much, because going from the mines to the starting area was not a huge deal. But once you get that minecart, to get anywhere you want to go outside of those two starting areas probably involves riding a minecart. And it's not just you get on the minecart and all of a sudden you're at the place, or you can even watch like a little scene where you ride around your minecart. Instead, they're all action scenes where you have to pick the right path on the minecart to get to where you want to go. And 9 out of 10 times, if you pick the wrong way, you die. And it restarts the whole minecart section. Again, it could be worse. You could start you back at the last real checkpoint, or at the last time you saved, or whatever the deal is. Thankfully, you start right at the beginning of that minecart section. But it ended up for me being nonstop memorization. Like I wasn't good enough at these minecart sections because it moved fast enough that I wasn't able to really kind of figure out where I was supposed to go, what I was supposed to do. Am I supposed to turn here or not? And by the time you figure out you shouldn't have gone the right place, you're driving right towards a wall. Did anyone else have the same problems I had with the minecarts? Because honestly, for every minecart section, after about 10 minutes of just frustration, I looked up a video of the solution and just wrote it down because I wasn't going to spend more time on it.
That was the exact solution that I had. I had the same problem. And I just got incredibly frustrated. And it's not just that. I did not know at first the sheer amount of times, the sheer frequency I would be spending with that minecart. This isn't one trip on the minecart. It isn't a couple of trips. You're going to be going back and forth to these mines a lot. And yeah, I tried to get through the games. Yeah, I tried to play them like I would have played them back at the time, kind of limited. help as far as looking online or anything like that. This is one of the very few episodes where the game we were playing, just to continue, just to keep the will to continue on, I had to look this one up.
I would like to congratulate our boy Bjorn, the one that recommended this game, because if he made it through this game without, this was back then where you didn't have the internet and such. If you made it through this game, including all of these minecart stages without any help, I applaud you, because these minecart stages are some of the worst things I've ever played in a game. And I cannot, the first one that came up, I was like, oh, you know what, this is kind of neat. What are we doing here? And then I ran into a wall instantly, and I ran into a wall again the next try. And it continued that way for a dozen or so times until I just got to the point like you guys and looked it up and saw which way I needed to go. I cannot imagine anyone memorizing this entire maze of minecart paths that you have to take. It's insane. I mean, they're not short. It's not just a few different turns here and there. It is dozens or more paths that you have to memorize in some of those to end up where you need to go. It's crazy.
It's infuriating. It is the most frustrating piece of gaming we've played in what, this is episode 27. In 27 episodes, I can think of nothing I got more frustrated about, other than you guys making fun of my picks, than this minecart section. The minecarts were... If I wouldn't have had save states and a video to get through them, I would have never gotten through the second minecart set. The first one was long, but I was able to figure it out. But the second one, which is also when I was like, oh, great, more minecart, just the scale of how big that mine was, I almost just gave up in frustration and sadness. I could not get myself to focus enough on these minecarts. That was my other problem with the minecarts. Like, if they would have zoomed out in any way so you could see more of the minecart, maybe I would have liked, or more of the mine shaft and the area. Maybe I would have liked it a little more, but instead they never zoom out from the same view the entire game. And so for a scale to make this minecart seem like it was a long minecart, it goes a long distance. You can only see about 20 feet arguably in front of you. And at that point, if you haven't already decided you want to turn left or right, you're probably not going to make that turn. You're going to go right past the turn you need to make and right into a hole or a part of the track that's broken or a wall. I mean, I had to just kind of die over and over and over again on these sections until I could say, okay, I know if I go left, right, here's a longer set of track. And I'll do that every time until I figure out that's the wrong way. And I never would have gotten through those sections.
And there's the little parts on the track itself that's missing. So like I would memorize which turn I needed to go, but then I would forget that there's these little chunks of track that's not there. So you have to actually lean your minecart one way or the other to get past them, and I would hit them every single time.
Yeah, and and the thing, it's not just how frustrating it is, but the time I was playing, I was thinking, this is young Merlin, and Merlin conjures an image of what kind of game, what you might expect in a game, and I surely didn't think, out of the few hours I spent, I was going to spend half of it on a minecart. I thought there'd be heavier fantasy elements, maybe some knights, some dragons, something. Not a minecart. It seems completely out of place for what I had in my head. Now, as a kid, I probably wouldn't care, but now going into it, I'm bewildered by the direction they took with this.
Well, so you'll get through the starting area, and you go through the mines, and you figure out you need to find the minecart and make it work again. So you go back and forth to get several different items. Then you go through the mines, you ride the minecart to where it breaks a wall open, and you go on that wall, and you all of a sudden end up in like an undersea grotto, and you're like, yes, a whole new area. I'm underwater, and this is going to be really cool. And it's just another underwater maze. But instead of the difficulty of having dwarves everywhere that are trying to kill you, or minecarts, you only have a very limited air supply, and it's very limited. There are 3 bubbles that show up on the side of the screen, and I'd say within 15 seconds, if you haven't found an air source, you've died. And
this was one of my least favorite.
The only air source you're going to have is those mermaids. You'll find mermaids in these caves, and when you walk up to a cave, a mermaid will come out, and they'll I guess, blow air into you, despite that mermaids don't breathe air, which was a good point you made, Jeremy. But but then the same exact cave image, you'll go to another cave, and like a fish will pop out that just attacks the crap out of you. So you have to guess the right caves to go to find the air mermaids, and still pick the right number of caves you need to get to the end sequence of the underwater section. And I guarantee I'm not the only person who did this. Did either of you make it to the end of the underwater sequence, which is very clearly like a light circle that you can tell is supposed to be, oh, there's light above where I am, and then I couldn't figure out what to do.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And I made it to the end, and I died like 4 times, and I thought, I'm not doing something right. I must have missed an item. I must have somehow, in the 6 screens I can go to, the 6 areas I can go to, I must have missed something very obvious. So I went back, and I spent all this time going through all the areas I've already been through to try to find an item that I must have missed somewhere. And it turns out the way you raise yourself up out of the depths of the sea is that damn balloon again.
Fucking balloon. Yep.
That balloon.
The balloon that does nothing most of the time other than make your character float up in the air in like a comical circular manner, and then it drops you down to the ground, is the only way in and out of that water section.
And and I never would have thought about it, because once I used it in the mines, I thought, all right, that's the purpose of this. That is the sole purpose of this item. It's going to be in the mines. It's not going to come into play again. So yeah, and it's just it's frustrating, especially. I mean, if I was a kid and I was out of school for the summer, if it was right now, years ago, I was out for the summer. All right, I'll waste an hour. But now, when I've just got home from work, when I have maybe a few hours before I have to go to bed and get back up and go to work, I get frustrated when I've spent about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour trying to figure out what to do, only to find out that it's something that simple. And I just don't have the mind for that kind of game nowadays, I guess. And I've got to go back. This underwater thing. One of the reasons I could almost not finish a Sonic game was how frantic it becomes. The rush for air when it's starting to run out. And any game that has something like that, Mario 64 also, I get, my heart starts racing. I'm in a near sweat. And this one got me again. So I almost had to tap out early on this game. But I made it through.
I will say that balloon that gets you out of the water is the only, I guess, puzzle or use of an item in this entire game that actually makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of.
Because you're filling yourself up with air to get out of it. It just makes sense. But everything else, every other item I've used in this game, nothing really made sense.
Well, if we want to really look into it, where are you getting this air from to fill yourself up underwater?
It's kind of the same thing with the mermaids. Why are they giving me air when they very clearly breathe water? So I don't think young Merlin went for the details.
Can we say it's mad? It's mad. It's magic.
It's magic.
Yeah, it's all just magic.
This was the point when I got through the water section. Jeremy, when he first started playing this, and I think you started right before I did, you said, this game certainly does love to backtrack. Mm-hmm. And I realized the first few levels, or first few areas, that, you go from the starting area to the mine, back to the starting area to get new item, and go back to the mine to get new item, to take back to the starting area to get new item. The big reason you have to backtrack the most is the only way to get new attack powers and half of your items, really, is you find these gems throughout the world, and you take them back to that very starting lake you landed into when you started in this area, and you throw it back in the lake, and all of a sudden it's the lady of the lake, it turns out, based on the manual, but the lady of the lake will gift you a new power or a new item when you give her these gems. So you have to, no matter where you are in the game, if you grab a gem, chances are you're not going to get any farther than where you are right now in that area without going all the way back, and there's no shortcuts. It's all the way back through the underwater. So you come out of the underwater cave, and you can see there's a like a dwarf who comes out and sees you from this other cave, and you can tell that's where you're supposed to go, but there's a gap in the way, and you cannot get there because there's a gap in the way. But there is a bright yellow gem, so you get the bright yellow gem, and you go all the way back through the underwater area you just figured out, and you go back through the mines and back to the starting area, and you throw the yellow gem in the lake, and you get spring shoes. And then the spring shoes, you go back to that, all the way back through the mines and all the way back through the underwater caverns. And again, you figured out how to go, but it's still the matter that you have to do it. You have to walk that in real time. And you go all the way back to that cave, and you jump over with spring shoes, and you're like, yes, now I'm in this new puzzle area. And you get about 3 feet into there, and there's another, like a blue gem. And you're like, oh, damn it. So you take the blue gem all the way back, and it gives you the item you need to go the next step in that room. And it's a lot of that. There's a lot of that in the game where you're like, okay, if I could have just had a warp button back to there, or if I could have, instead of getting a blue gem, if they would have just given me that item, you could probably get through this whole game in 15 minutes if you knew what you were doing. But it's that backtracking that's in there, combined with the fact that they've kind of made it an action game that's a very clunky action game. If it wasn't for this podcast and having a goal to finish this, if I bought it, sure, I would have probably plowed through it enough to eventually figure it out, because you don't buy a $60 game and not finish it. But if I would have rented this would have been hey, this was fun after 5 minutes, and gone back to the rental store, never to be touched again.
This was like someone at Westwood Studios, which is the developer, knew me back as a kid and had listened to me complain about every single game that I would rent, and knew every single pet peeve that I had. And they were like, let's make an entire game out of everything this guy hates.
That's it. We'll show that little shit sometime.
It's just, I mean, I hate to say it, but man, this game, it just, every little thing it did just got right on my nerves, because it's got it's got backtracking, it's got those underwater stages, it's got just the minecarts, everything that you could possibly put into a game that really just ticked off a box of something that I do not like in video games. It's here. And once that backtracking really started kicking in, especially that scenario that Jeremy P. just talked about, I was done. I could not do any more of what this game was wanting me to do. Just everything I would come up to, I was like, well, I got through this part. I made it through that minecart stage. What could possibly be worse than that? Oh, here's an underwater stage. Okay, well, I get through this underwater stage. What could possibly be worse than that? Okay, I got to backtrack all the way to the beginning of the stage. Got through that. What could possibly be worse? Got to backtrack to the very back part of this goddamn stage again. And it was about at that point. I did make it a little bit farther, but I just could not do it to myself anymore.
Yeah, and Jeremy P., I think you finished it.
I did finish it. I mean,
I think this is one of the rare games where I think just one of us finished this one. I didn't make it. So
how far did you get, Jeremy? Did you get through the after the underwater maze, and you go back and forth and back and forth? Then you have the it's kind of a fortress where you have to push statues around to these specific spots to make it so you can open doors.
Right. And I got past that part, and then I made it to the I guess the rainbow world, where it's just a bunch of mushrooms and rainbows, and everything's kind of oversized. And then it introduced yet another pet peeve of mine. It was when you use teleporters to teleport around a maze of a stage to try and figure out which teleporters are the correct ones to use. And that was the point where I was like, I can't do this no more. I can't do it.
Yeah, we dropped out at the same spot, and I believe we dropped out for the same reason.
Well, the teleporters are annoying, and I'm 99% sure. I mean, I didn't bother taking the time to write this down when I was doing it, but I don't think they're consistent. I don't think it's a matter of if you're in one screen and you go to one. It's like you walk into a flower and it zips you up and then it teleports you somewhere else. I don't think it's always the same spot. I think it's when you're teleported, it goes to one of 6 spots. I don't think it's a guaranteed teleport from point A to point B. I think it's just here's point A and you'll get one of the next 6 spots. So it made it even worse because there were parts where you were like, I know I want to go in this teleporter, and you kept going back to the same 3 screens. You're like, I know there's more screens than this. I've seen them 100 times before. And you'd have to just keep walking into these teleporters till you eventually got lucky and got the right spots.
Yeah, that's unacceptable. The teleporter itself's bad enough, kind of learning where each one goes. But if that is the case, if it's randomized, then yeah, it's a deed even more evil than the minecart in this game.
The other part of that, and I don't know if you guys even played with in the Rainbow Flowerland enough. Underneath the Rainbow Flowerland, and there's all these little caves that go there, is essentially an anthill.
Yeah.
Series of mazes that, again, some of that was because they try to make it look like it's an anthill and kind of craggy caves. There were actually walls you're supposed to walk through and around that you're supposed to see a little gap, and the gap is very, very small. And I mean, I was playing this on a full-size monitor. I mean, it wasn't like I was playing this on a tiny 13-inch TV or somewhere where I might not be able to pick up some details. I could see very well what was supposed to be there. And it just got to the point in the underground parts where I was just running into walls to see if there was anything I could get through, because it was very hard to tell what was supposed to be a wall and what was supposed to be a thin passage.
I learned very early that the game likes to do that in that the garden maze that I don't think we mentioned. Very early in the game, you have to go through a very large garden maze to find some items, and there were a lot of parts in that maze where you just had to walk through the wall. No idea that you needed to do that, but I kind of figured that one out early on, and when I was in that ant maze before I did quit, I was just kind of just walking into every single wall that I could just to see if I could get through.
Well, that was something I actually had to do in a number of places before then. If you had the manual and you knew this was, what was also a side goal. So aside from the trying to actually finish the game, when the game first came out, there was a contest in the back of the manual. And the contest was if you can find all 16 life hearts, or I guess it was 12 life hearts because you start with 4 or something. But if you find all the life hearts in the game, you take a picture of your screen, you send it off, and the first person to do that wins, I want to say it's like $10,000. It was something pretty substantial. But I couldn't find all the hearts in this game. I looked online for a guide, and I can only find 15. So that 16th heart, wherever it was, must have been crazy hidden. But there were a good number of those extra life hearts that you did have to kind of walk through the corner of the screen where you wouldn't see there's a doorway, and you'll kind of fumble around in the darkness till you come out in a little cave, and there's a heart there. There was a number of those before that maze in the mines. There was a couple hearts that were like that. So I kind of knew to look for that. But yes, the plant maze was a little frustrating. I think that same idea, though, where it wasn't as much a hidden wall, but it was supposed to be clearly marked as a pathway, but it looked exactly the same as another part that was supposed to clearly be a wall. Like it was not designed very well for what it was supposed to do. So from the plant area, you'll go back and forth from that plant area back to the area before that with the plant maze, because there's a kind of like a tree stump on the ground, and you keep putting these wooden hearts you find on the tree stump, and then the tree stump will have a little piece of ground shoot up, and then all those flowers, you find flowers throughout the game up to this point. You'll have to plant certain flowers in these little pieces that shoot up out of the ground to drop you more items. So most of the time you're spending in Rainbow Flowerland is just going through Rainbow Flowerland to find a wooden heart somewhere, and then back to this tree stump, and then all the way back through Wooden Heartland to find the next wooden heart, and then back to the tree stump. Another set of backtracking, not as annoying as the earlier parts of it, but it was still one of those points where, I was like, I've got to finish this game. I'm so close to the end. I've just got to do it. So I got through all the backtracking. There's a fight with a dragon at the end that actually was pretty interesting as far as, if you had the right items, it was pretty easy, but it was trying to figure out what items to use at the right time. I enjoyed that fight, and then as soon as he dies, and I'm not kidding you, because I didn't look this up online until after I got through this part, you kill him, what do you think he leaves behind?
A jewel.
You think a jewel, I go all the way back to the beginning. That would have been annoying, but not as annoying as this. He leaves a hole in the ground that you jump into for more minecarts.
Oh,
and I was just
everybody's favorite.
This fucking game. Minecarts.
What a way to celebrate a victory.
So at that point, I said, I've got to see how much is left in this game. I've got to see if I'm anywhere near the end. Is this minecart section going to be short? Is it another long section? It's the end of the game. The end of the game is a huge minecart section.
No.
And you have to drive in specific paths to find 4 doors. Behind each door is the bosses you've already fought, or bigger fights you've already fought. So there was like a pig guy you fought earlier that was very easy the first time, who's a little bit harder this time, but still pretty easy. There's the spider that was in the caverns that were in the anthills. There's a spider that you fight earlier. Again, he's not super hard, but he's back now with a few extra tweaks but you can't just go to any door. If you go to the wrong door, it's blocked with a big red ball, and it bounces you back into the minecarts. So you've got to go through 4 minecart sections and 4 boss fights to get to the last boss of the game, who is the Goblin King, who's originally the one who stole the girl that you were supposed to go save when you jumped in that lake that everyone forgot about from the beginning of the game because it doesn't really explain why you're there. And his fight is the only fight in the game that I actually was like, this fight, it kind of took all the items you had learned and all the things you learned, and it made it an interesting fight. But at this end section, I forgot to mention this, at the end section, as you go from boss fight to boss fight, and you have to do it in the right order, by the way, you go to the door to fight the boss, and there's an imprint on the door of one of the items you've already earned. And you have to actually give up that item for the rest of the game to fight that boss. And unfortunately, the first item you give away is the best weapon you've earned. So you spend all this time in the game earning better weapons and better ways to fight guys. You have that last weapon, which is a lightning bolt, for literally 45 seconds, and then you give it away right after the dragon fight. You earn it right before the dragon, you use it to fight the dragon, and then you give it away immediately after fighting the dragon.
Any other game, I would say that does not make sense, but I'm going to go with it for this game.
Well, it was definitely, again, from the point I first landed in this minecart and knew I had to do these 4 boss fights, I said, okay, I'm just going to look up a YouTube. Because if I have to figure out these minecarts, then none of us are going to finish this game. Because I knew you guys were a little farther back than me, and I assumed you wouldn't make it through the minecarts because they were really bad.
I mean, do you have to fight these bosses in the exact same order, or like can you pick them?
No, you've got to fight them in the same order. You have to go to a certain door. If you go to the wrong door before you're supposed to be there, it bounces you back, and you can't even stop.
Oh, that's
the
right.
minecart.
Okay. That's insane.
So you fight the 4 bosses in order. I mean, after each boss, there's a character you free from that you've met earlier. So, like there's the girl you saved is in there. So you save her, and then the girl you saw at the beginning was there. So you save her, and she kisses you, and you get all your life back or whatever. But still, again, think pre-emulator. I use a ton of save states. There's only like 6 checkpoints in this game. So if you die and give up, like you're like, I'm done for the day on this stupid game, and you turn off your Super Nintendo at this end section, the last save point is like before Flower Happy Land.
Oh my God.
No.
So I think it's mid Flower Happy Land, but still, you'd have to go all the way back there, and then you have to just nonstop go through this giant minecart section, the 4 bosses. Eventually, you do finish the Goblin King off. It's a fairly good fight, I have to say. I enjoyed that. And then you get a little scene where everyone's very happy. You save the girl you were chasing. You save the other people from the town that were captured by all the goblins. And then a goblin throws a rock on your head, and you wake up outside of your house because it was most likely all a dream, which is one of the worst endings ever. Especially after getting through what I got through, I was just like, this is infuriating. If I would have spent months on this game, if I would have bought it for $60, and that was the ending, I might have just thrown it out. I might have just cut that cartridge in half with a saw.
Again, I just want to know if Bjorn actually beat this game.
Yes,
and
I'd love to find out if he beat this game.
he needs to let us know, or if he just picked this game to torture us with, to see if any of us are crazy enough to make it to the end of this game.
I wonder. I'd like to know his motives also, because as it went along, I thought this guy, I thought he may have liked us, but after that, I'm not sure. As it went along, I thought maybe he had darker intent.
I mean, we do every we tear a game apart, like it or not. I would say that this is not a good game, and I did not necessarily like it, and I will never play it again. But I like puzzle adventure games. Like I'm a big fan of you mentioned the Sierra games. I love the LucasArts games. I liked that, and I think for that aspect on a console, this is a pretty good attempt to try to do that while still having some action scenes to appeal to a console audience, I suppose. I don't think they're necessary. I think if they would have cut out all the minecarts, if they would have cut out, some of the mazes I could live with, but the minecarts and some of the combat you'd have to go through in those mazes was a little irritating. They could have just put, I don't know, something else in there instead. Maybe it was just too short. I don't know, but it's got underneath it. I like the concept of these kind of games. It's just, I just don't think that it was ever, again, with a few exceptions, I don't think they're good on consoles. I think you need a mouse. I think you need, at least like for the Sierra games, you had to type in commands, and you couldn't do that on a console. I mean, Maniac Mansion, we mentioned on Nintendo, was a great game, amazing, but it's still, very, very frustrating if you weren't sure what to do, and you needed the manual and you needed the map that it came with because it gave you some phone numbers to call. It was, that was the area where, especially the Infocom games, they came with garbage that it came in the box that seemed like it was just pointless junk, but really was, at some point in the game, it would reference those things. If you didn't have them, you couldn't finish it. That was their attempt at copy protection. But it does not have a place in the in the Super Nintendo era to have that kind of level of complexity to a game.
Yeah, and I think, I can't say all bad about this one. Like I said, I thought a lot of the things on the presentation side, as far as the graphics, they were nothing wrong with those. Sound, I thought, was, good also. And I enjoyed some parts of it. I'm not against puzzle games, but I just felt the deck was stacked against you on this one. Maybe, if I would have sat down with a manual, and I like a good challenge, but this was too much. I need things spelled out for me. I don't like them all the way spelled out. I need them spelled out just a little bit more, as far as a few things on this. And man, if they could have got rid, even just getting rid of the minecarts.
If you would have found a clue somewhere in the game that for before that minecart, let's say in the dwarf town, dwarf mines, you're wandering through and all of a sudden you find a piece of paper that has a bunch of different directions written on it.
Yes.
And then you get to the minecart and that was the way through it, because you don't get to plan out your trip ahead of time because it's not a big enough area viewed to view the whole map. In fact, in that first minecart especially, you weren't even sure what the point was. You got on the minecart and you're just driving through parts of the mine you've never seen before because you can't access them without the minecart. Yeah. And you're not even sure if you're supposed to be finding a cave exit, if you're supposed to fly out of the mines and end up in a new area. What are you supposed to do? And instead it just drives into a wall and shoots a hole in it. Where every other time it drives through a hole in the wall and you die horribly. So, what are you supposed to do? It just was not explained very well.
That's exactly what I'm saying. If there was, like you said, if there was something laying around that seemed cryptic at the time, because maybe it's just a bunch of arrows on a paper, but once you get in the mines, it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense. But yeah, I mean, just I don't think anybody's asking for their hand to be held throughout the thing, but I think there were ways to introduce this section where it is not such trial. Nobody's going to nail this the first time. No. Nobody's going to nail this the first 10 times. And I just think that's unacceptable in a video game. There's something where you have to die many times to get through it.
Well, it's not even a matter of reflexes or any. Again, it's trial and error. There's no good. There's no clue to what to do. There's no method to the madness there. It's just eventually you'll die enough where you know the right path. And that's not enjoyable in any way.
No. And there were ways to do it better, I think. But I mean, but with what we have, I think it's interesting. It's noteworthy just for what they tried to pull off, that kind of game on the Super Nintendo, and like it's been said a few times, for them to bring this kind of game to a console, I guess they did their best with it. I personally think they got a little lazy with all the mines and whatnot, but it's an interesting entry in the library.
I think it definitely could have been a better console game if they did a lot of the stuff that you guys said, but I just don't think that this kind of game really had its place on a console. That the audience just, I don't, there might have been a few people out there, and maybe Bjorn was one of them, that really enjoyed this kind of game that you just really didn't get on consoles. But I just think that this would have been better off on a PC. And I think it's kind of amazing that this is a Super Nintendo exclusive. It wasn't even ported over from the PC or anything else. So to have this style of game made exclusively for the Super NES is it just doesn't work for me. Like I said, it's just a top 10 list of pet peeves that I hate in video games, all in one game. And I appreciate what they tried to do, and anyone that really likes the game, it's great. I'm always jealous of people that like things that I just don't, because I don't understand how they like them, and I want to understand. But yeah, there's just too many things that are just too annoying with this game to really make me endear to me or like it at all.
Well, next show, we're going to go back to something a little more R-speed, a little more console style. We're going to go back to the PlayStation for Gex. The Gex, or at least Gex on the PS2. I think it was originally a 3DO game, but I can't find a good 3DO emulator. I don't own a 3DO, so we'll play it on the PlayStation. I think that's the right way to do it.
I think we can tell whose pick this was.
I think you guys would be surprised. I may be eating my words come next podcast, but I think you guys will both be pleasantly surprised. And this is the very first Gex. This is not Gex 2 or 3D or whatever the fuck they called the sequel. This is the original side-scrolling 2D Gex with all the voices you can handle. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
A lot of sound clips coming.
I'll tell you, I've never played a Gex game at all. This will be my first one going in. So we'll see.
Well, until then, if you want to find us on Facebook, please check us out there. Find us on Twitter at Retrovaniacs. Please check us out on YouTube, and we'll see you guys next time.